Opioid abuse and heroin addiction are destroying families and communities across the country. On average, 115 Americans die each day from an opioid overdose.
Since 6 on Your Side joined the EW Scripps Company, we have seen the opioid epidemic run rampant in Cincinnati and Cleveland and Nashville and Indianapolis, where our sister stations operate. As we watched with horror from Idaho, we began to notice the same stories popping up more and more here in the Gem State. And that's why 6 on Your Side is taking an unprecedented step. We are committing a major amount of our time, resources, and talent for the next year to help stop the opioid crisis from getting worse and finding hope for families before it's too late. 6 on Your Side's Karen Lair starts our Finding Hope team coverage with a look at how opioid abuse impacts local law enforcement.
A 958% increase in just 5 years. That's what Idaho State Police are seeing when it comes to heroin-positive items tested by state labs. The highest amounts of heroin seized off Idaho highways are coming through Ada County. But where are the drugs coming from? Well, we drove to eastern Idaho to ride along with ISP officers in District 5, seeing a vast majority of the state's opioid problems traffic into the state from Utah. Dealers are crossing state lines, buying in bulk and bringing drugs back into Idaho.
We don't have enough people, money, or manpower to work all the heroin cases that we could work.
But the problem isn't staying on the eastern side of the state. From 2015 to 2016, Canyon County actually saw the highest rate increase when it comes to heroin trafficking cases confirmed by state labs. The problem plaguing the entire Treasure Valley.
Out of my last 6 evaluations, 4 of those have come up with some sort of opiate in their system.
But police say their opioid problems don't end with heroin. According to the CDC, for every 100 people in the Gem State, there are 86 painkiller prescriptions.
People are obtaining these for illicit use, basically using it to get high and not in accordance to a prescription. Most of the times they're not even prescribed the medication.
Many of the state's drug users are getting high and then taking the wheel. Law enforcement now forced to take more precautions, like how to save overdose victims while still enforcing laws. As we continue our research into this opioid abuse in this Finding Hope series, we're learning all of this is simply the beginning of a much bigger story.
And that story affects real lives, our family members, our community, and even those yet to be born.
He's a growing, perfect little baby boy.
There's a new specialty clinic at St. Luke's Hospital in downtown Boise that's committed to helping pregnant women with opioid use disorder.
It's very clear punishment is not the way to go about, reducing these types of behaviors. And pregnancy is a time where women are motivated to change themselves.
But Dr. Seib does not expect substance-dependent mothers to get clean and sober while pregnant.
If there's anything around it that I think has been tough to get rid of, that is the whole idea of addiction and the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality.
So it may shock you, but Dr. Seib and his team prescribe a replacement drug for pregnant moms. Buprenorphine can cut the cravings for opioids, and studies show it does not cause birth defects. Some people think it's controversial to treat a drug addiction with another drug, but Dr. Seib says his patients are finding hope. 40% of all opioid overdose deaths involve a prescription opioid. Talk to anyone on the front lines of this crisis and they'll tell you opioid abuse is a disease. And until we start treating it as such, this problem will only continue to grow. 6 on Your Side's Roland Barris has more in our Finding Hope team coverage.
Michelle, the most commonly accepted gold standard for treatment of opioid addiction is one of 3 replacement drugs that can remove the cravings and enable a normal life to take place. If taken responsibly, and that's the key, many say it's the equivalent of taking high blood pressure medication for the rest of your life. And we don't stigmatize that.
Meanwhile, our already overcrowded prisons are filling up with more opioid addicts, many of whom got hooked on prescriptions from their doctor. Those who've been through addiction say we're spending too much on locking people up.
If we spent half of what we spend in incarceration right now and put that into substance abuse treatment, we could turn this thing around overnight. But we've taken a medical disease and we've started trying to treat it with the criminal justice system.
In case you think that's just what you'd expect to hear from someone who's been incarcerated, consider this. Even the head of prison says it's time to change our attitudes towards criminalizing addiction.
We'd love to see a diversion type program where you maybe get some substance abuse treatment and you maybe get some medication assisted therapy on the front end, and we divert people out of our prison system so that they're diverted into treatment programs.
Again, the key is having enough treatment programs, and that takes money, but it's cheaper than the alternative.
And to explain that, the National Drug Intelligence Center says drug-related crime and incarceration, along with their societal costs, add up to about $113 billion a year nationwide. The estimated cost, meanwhile, of treating drug abuse is only $14 billion, a fraction of the cost. These are the types of issues that we will continue to shine a light on to sharpen the focus on an epidemic and a stigma that has to change.
So, Don, just a few of the dozens of stories we were already working on for our year-long commitment to finding hope.
We are joining the opioid fight head-on, sharing raw, emotional stories of real people every week. We'll also highlight the incredibly hard work happening in our communities to stop the opioid epidemic and shine a spotlight on areas where community leaders are falling short.
The 6 on Your Side Finding Hope team is committed to looking at the opioid crisis from every angle, especially yours. So share your story, your thoughts, questions, concerns with us. Send us an email or maybe message us on Facebook. Together we believe we can find hope.